This week's episode of Trek Geeks is brought to you by Fansets, the place for amazing pin collectibles. They have over 150 officially licensed Star Trek pins to choose from, with new pins coming out every month. See all the pins and collectibles they have to offer at fansets.com, and stay tuned for this week's special Trek Geeks discount code. Fansets. We are Star Trek.
Hi, this is Michelle Specht. I play Dr. Elise McKenna on Star Trek Continues. Oh my God, I'm totally fangirling right now because I just met Dan Davidson and Bill Smith of the Trek Geeks podcast. Oh my gosh, they are amazing.
From the Search and Rescue Division of Pod Fleet Command, it's the biggest little show this side of the Alpha Quadrant, your independent Star Trek podcast. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Trek Geeks. I'm your co-host, Bill Smith. It's so great to be here with you for episode number 155. We have a great show on tap for you today. You know, I mentioned Search and Rescue earlier. We're going to talk a little bit about an episode that features some caves. Because, you know, you never see caves in Star Trek episodes. That doesn't happen at all. No. But, in order to do that, I need to bring on my co-host, and he is somebody whom I would like to abandon in a cave and then seal up the entrance. He's the grasping for air and daylight Dan Davidson. And Dan, get back in there, would you, buddy?
Wow, that's your intros are always, you know, so negative. It's like we're dancing a tango all the time, back and forth, tay to tay. Is that the right phrase?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
That's okay. Well, it's great to be here anyway for episode 155 of the Trek Geeks podcast as we continue along this amazing Deep Space Nine 25th anniversary celebration. And as you said, lots of caves in today's episode that we're going to be discussing. Lots of brilliant acting, lots of lightning, and lots of crazy talk. I'm not going to lie. As we delve into the amazing season 6 episode of Deep Space Nine entitled Waltz. So, Bill, may I have this dance?
No, you may not.
Excellent.
And the crazy people around me have told me you can't. I'm excited to talk about this. You know, we've seen a lot of Dukat and Sisko this year, but this is really a confrontation that sets up the season finale, you know, a year and a half after this. Or sorry, the series finale a year and a half after this. This interaction between Dukat and Sisko really sort of pushes it to a new level, and we're going to talk about that later on. Before we do that, Dan, let's let some crazy voices from the internet send us some messages. How might they do that?
It's very easy to do so, and I'm always got crazy voices somewhere in my head or other places. So just head right on over to trekgeeks.com/contact, and there you'll find a variety of ways to get in touch with Bill, with me, or with both of us at the very same time. You can head over and leave us a voicemail. You can Skype chat us. You can fill out the contact form and type us out a personalized message. Or you can even click on that big old blue button on the right side of the website and leave us a message with your very own voice using SpeakPipe. And hey, don't forget, the place to be on Facebook these days is the official Facebook group Camp Kittimer. Bring all your Trek talk, your Trek pics, and your Trek love over to the site and join, yes, over 1,000 other friends to talk all things Trek. It's very easy to do. Just head right on over to facebook.com/groups/Camp Kittimer and be ready to be part of truly a wonderful social media experience. As always, we thank our wonderful admins, Heather, Jackie, and Dan, for the amazing job they do over there running the camp. It's a great place to be, and we look forward to seeing you over there. But please do remember that any messages or comments that you leave in this places may be used in a future episode. Bill.
What?
Yes, I know. It was the voices in my head. I just...
that was a little fast. This is not a video podcast. People can't see you swatting things.
Uh-huh.
Yes, but any comments or messages you leave us in any of these places may be used in a future episode, I believe is what you said.
See, but when you say it, it's just so much more boring.
Dan, it's time for the news from TrekNews.net. Spanning the Alpha Quadrant. For all the news on all the Star Treks, yo. It's TrekNews.net. I was going to let you see how far you could go before you started losing air.
You wanted that, I'll bet.
Online at TrekNews.net. You're absolutely right. I wanted that. Boring old me wanted that. Thank you very much. Dan, lots to talk about this week. It's been a couple of weeks since we've talked about the news, and there's been a lot going on. And of course, the holiday season is right around the corner now that we're in autumn, as far as seasons go here in the United States. It's right around the corner, the holidays, and at this year's New York Comic Con, we saw some really cool Star Trek looking swag on display.
I look forward to this time of year every year because I am the easiest person on the planet to shop for Christmas because there's always new Star Trek stuff coming out every year. This year is no exception. There's some awesome stuff coming out that, as you said, was on display at New York Comic Con. And starting with Eagle Moss, they had some great stuff on display, including the USS Glenn, which will be retailing for $80 and is available now, I believe. But it is a limited edition starship, so check that out quickly. Also coming in November of this year will be the USS Buran, so keep your eyes open for that. And then during the winter months in 2018, which basically the way I look at it means December, because winter starts in December, we can be looking forward to the Klingon Koch class starship, which will be very nice as well.
Could you say that again?
The Koch class starship, it's very nice. There's some great pictures available to see. And in 2019, we can be looking forward to the USS Clark, including other ships including the Enterprise C, which I know Bill can't wait to get from one of his favorite episodes, yesterday's Enterprise. That will be an XL starship. And this one I found very interesting. They're going to have the space dock available that we've seen in so many movies and series. So that'll be kind of cool to get our mitts on and put on display. Also, as mentioned several episodes ago, Eagle Moss is going to have at some point the USS Enterprise as seen in the finale of Star Trek Discovery Season 1. So keep your eyes out for that. So Eagle Moss has lots of good stuff on the way, which I'm looking forward to. Of course, our friends over at Fansets had their Mirror Universe logos available at the convention, and they are now available on the website, fansets.com. They're available in gold, silver, and bronze, and now available as their second release for the month of October as this episode drops is Captain Danby Connor from the Mirror Universe. So check that out. Another great pin from my favorite universe. And Bill, you and I have been collecting the Hallmark ornaments since they first started coming out, and we got a sneak peek at what 2019 is going to bring us over there at New York Comic Con last weekend. They're going to have a Tribble next year. They are going to have your favorite of the Starship Enterprises, which is the refitted USS Enterprise. Also, the figure ornaments that they have started coming out with every year will be a Discovery Saru and Michael Burnham ornament. And as well as, in addition to those, I should say, there's also a preview of a TOS transporter room tabletop ornament and 3 itty-bitty plushes, which we have grown to love. Vina as an Orion slave girl, as well as Captain Janeway and 7 of 9 from Star Trek Voyager. So tons of stuff. But Bill, I've been talking for a couple minutes, but I'm not done. I got one more thing that I want to talk about, and I'm sure you're looking forward to this one. It is, for you Kelvin Timeline fans, from Diamond Select Toys. They're going to have a couple of new action figures that were on display at the Comic-Con, and they'll be available very soon. Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock from the Kelvin Timeline with some nice accessories, including phasers and phaser rifles and different hands that you can put on the figures to hold various accessories. So lots and lots of cool things coming out to add to our collection of accoutrements.
Does that mean it's my turn to speak now?
Yeah, sorry, that was long.
That was a lot of stuff.
Lots of stuff.
Yeah, I have always maintained that I love the Ambassador class Enterprise. I just don't like the episode Yesterday's Enterprise.
I just like putting that out there.
I think was it Rick Sternbach who designed that? I think
I believe so. It's brilliant. It's a great mishmash is the wrong word, but it's a great flow of what we were used to seeing and what we got with the Enterprise D. So it is a very nice starship.
Yeah, it definitely bridges the original series era and the next gen era, I think, beautifully. Mm-hmm. So I'm very excited about that, believe it or not. So you could stop making fun of me. Thank you.
Oh, all right.
Of course, Dan, in just a couple of weeks, in fact, 2 weeks from as we record this, actually, you and I are going to be headed to Albany, New York for the Northeast Trek Con, and we found out just yesterday that you and I are on a panel we didn't even know was happening. We're very psyched about this. It is going to be awesome.
It is going to be awesome. And this was you sent me a message and I was like, what? So yeah, not only are we going to be having a fantastic time just all weekend, but on Sunday afternoon from noon to 1 p.m., we're going to be part of an incredibly interesting sounding panel called Podcasting 101. And we're going to be joined by some wonderful friends from Trek FM, as well as Women at Warp. And to top off that, if it can be topped off, Mr. Garrett Wong will be hosting the panel. OMG, I cannot wait for this. It's going to be amazing. And we hope anyone who is in the area can swing on by to Albany on the weekend of October 26th through the 28th to have a great time at the Northeast Trek Con with us.
You can find the entire schedule at northeasttrekcon.com. And of course, like Dan said, it's October 26th through 28th at the Albany Capital Center, right in the heart of downtown Albany, New York. So it's going to be a fantastic time. We got Garrett's going to be there, obviously, Nicole DeBoer, Chase Masterson, Jeffrey Combs, Bob O'Reilly, J.G. Hertzler. Those are voices you may hear at some point coming up very soon. Aaron Eisenberg, Max Kredenchik, Larry Nemechek, Rick Sternbach, the aforementioned Mr. Sternbach, Mark Okrand, Doug Drexler, Andre Bormanis, a whole bunch of people who have been tied to Trek before, and us. It's going to be a great time. We're going to be in the dealer's room all weekend long. And Dan, we're going to be also doing a special raffle to benefit the American Cancer Society. And it's going to be pretty fantastic. Some lucky attendee of Northeast TrekCon is going to walk away with a pretty incredible prize.
Absolutely. As always, we're so excited to be teamed up with our friends at Fansets. We're going to be raffling off a Deep Space Nine 25th anniversary framed pin set that was unveiled at STLV this past year. It is gorgeous. It is I think it's the best one that they've come out with so far in terms of the pin collections. It's absolutely great to have available to raffle off. And it's not going to be that expensive if you want to raffle, take a chance at the raffle bill. But we do want to talk about, before you give the prices for the raffle, we do want to say that you do have to be there to enter this raffle. It is only going to be available for you to attempt to win if you're at the convention. That's
right. And that's one of those, legal things. According to American law, you can't conduct a raffle online, or else it's technically considered a lottery, and those are regulated by the federal government. So in order to win this, you do have to attend Northeast TrekCon. You do have to come to our table in the dealer's room, and you can get one ticket for $5 or 5 tickets for $20. So that's actually not too bad. And the winner will be selected that weekend before the convention closes down. You don't have to be present to win, which is nice. You can make sure you write your information on the back of the ticket, and we'll be sure that we get that out to you if for some reason you can't attend. But that's Northeast TrekCon, October 26th through 28th. Come win some pins from us. That's all we're going to say.
I don't have anything else to say.
Dan, speaking of Fansets, our friends there are hard at work with some amazing new pin ideas that are going to be released over the coming year. Now, you and I can't say what they're coming out with, but we can say that they will be of the same quality and design that we've come to expect with this amazing line of Star Trek pins.
Absolutely. yeah, I can't say it any better than that, Bill. The artwork is amazing. The high quality is second to none, and their prices are, well, out of this world. I said it. Sorry. So yeah, folks, just head right on over to fansets.com to see all the latest pins available, including the new Harry Mudd from Star Trek Discovery pin, in addition to their line of Mirror Universe pins that were recently unveiled at New York Comic Con.
So as you hear this, it will already be past the 15th of the month. That means that there's going to be another brand new Fansets pin on the Fansets website. And as a special bonus to Trek Geeks listeners, if you want to receive 15% off your entire order at fansets.com this week, simply enter the word Waltz at checkout. That's all caps, no spaces, Waltz. And this code is going to be available until midnight on Monday, October 22nd, so don't delay. Fansets is pinpoint accuracy, and we thank our friends at Fansets for sponsoring this week's episode. Dan, as we move on, we're going to talk about Waltz. You brought up tango earlier, and I think in a way this almost starts off as a tango, but it definitely is a waltz in the way these two characters operate around each other and dance through this conflict. I think it's an aptly named episode.
Oh, you just took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say it was perfectly named for what this episode is, and you get to see it from both sides. You get to see it from Dukat's side, you get to see it from Ben's side, and it's really an interesting trip down the rabbit hole, so to speak, in this episode when it's just the two of them that on that abandoned planet.
Yeah, it starts off very interestingly. It's got a very long tease for this episode. I was always kind of thrown by the fact that Sisko would just, in the middle of a Dominion war, would spend a couple of days on another starship, going to a star base to put Dukat at some kind of arraignment, which is apparently just a formality. However, I understand they had to find a way to get these two characters together without necessarily destroying the Defiant. All right, so I get it. It's a bit of license. It seems a little kludgy, but you forget that occurs, by the time we start getting into the scenes in the cave.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I actually like how they did this. I totally agree with you. It's the middle of a war. He's one of the top commanders of the fleet against the Dominion, but yet he's on the Honshu traveling to give his testimony to the Federation grand jury, which, as you said, is just a formality. If it's a formality, why can't he do it over subspace? Why can't he do it, by, writing a letter, give it to Sam Cogley to deliver? I don't know. But it is interesting that he's there, and he's there for several days before he even goes and bothers to see Dukat. But I really liked how they did it, and I liked that initial interaction, especially when he walks into the brig and Dukat is meditating. That's not something that we've ever seen Dukat doing before. So it was really great. Ben was truthfully sorry about what happened to Zial and gives his condolences. And I think, at least at the beginning of this episode, Dukat felt sorry, Sisko felt sorry for Dukat in a lot of ways and aspects.
Well, I think it's because he sees a Dukat who has essentially been broken. I mean, we know Dukat has been seeing at least one doctor, who's probably a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I'm sorry, whichever one. Somebody to work through his emotions and his feelings and to gauge his mental state, and I think that this is an interesting juncture for the Dukat character. So, in looking this up on Memory Alpha, as we typically do before we talk about a general episode, to maybe talk about how this episode came about, it's interesting to note that by the time this episode aired, the Dukat character had become incredibly popular among fans, and honestly, more popular than the writers ever intended or wanted. So, and we have to attribute that all to Marc Alaimo. He's amazing every time he appears on screen. And I think that you don't really get a sense for how truly exceptional Marc Alaimo is until we get to here. We've seen him, show Dukat as a leader, as a statesman, as a former prefect of Bajor, as a guy who, has experienced some loss, but you don't realize how deeply evil Dukat is until we get to Waltz. And that was a conscious decision by the writers to sort of take him down a peg or two, to make him not as popular, to make him confront some of the evil that he's wrought upon Bajor. And I find that really interesting. I guess in watching the show, I didn't realize Dukat had become that popular. But as I rewatched Deep Space Nine, I absolutely see why.
It's funny that you say that, because if that's what the reason that they did this episode, then I think it backfired, because I think this episode makes him more popular than ever. At least for me. I've talked about, so ever since we've been doing this podcast, that Dukat is my favorite Star Trek villain of all time. And it is because of Marc Alaimo and what he brings to that character. And this episode, he is genius at what he does and able to show us that roller coaster of emotions and psychosis that he's dealing with. And he's talking to people who aren't there, and he's firing his phaser. And I think it's brilliant. And I also have to give credit to Renee, who directed this episode. He worked fantastically with Marc and Avery to make this episode do wonders for the Dukat character for the rest of the series.
You know, you bring up a great point there. Renee Aubergenois does such an amazing job directing this episode. I mean, I can't imagine how intimidating it must be as an actor to direct sometimes. But when you have two actors like Avery Brooks and Marc Alaimo essentially doing a 2-character piece for most of the episode, it's got to be a really daunting task on some level. And Renee handles it so superbly. You know, this episode is directed amazingly well. And I agree with you 100%. He really kills this. Plus, I mean, you have to look at the fact that, you know, this is a script written by Ronald D. Moore. So already Renee was starting with exceptional material as well.
Right. I love the aspects of what Dukat's mind is going through while they're in the caves. The idea of bringing Damar and Kira and Weyoun into this episode, even though they're not really in the episode, is awesome. It you know, we've always seen movies and TV shows where people are hallucinating and talking to people who aren't really there. And I've always looked at it kind of like, okay, that's just kind of weird. I can't ever see me doing that, but it works with this episode. And that's, I think, again, we're going to probably repeat this 5 or 6 times during the course of our episode today. It's because of what Marc Alaimo does with this script. He's brilliant with it. And even though they're short scenes with, like, especially with Nanaz, Kira in the cave, she's, oh my God, if that's what she was saying to me, I'd probably want to kill her too.
Well, you know, we've seen, you know, our regular characters or the characters we expect to see represent different things in Deep Space Nine the whole way so far. So, you know, the regular characters we know represent the wormhole aliens. And there was even a season 3 episode called Distant Voices where we see a little bit of that as well, where, you know, the characters begin appearing as different aspects of a personality. In this case, Dukat. And I think it was done even better than those other instances because it really gave us a look into how deeply disturbed Dukat is. You know, you get the sense that something's not right at the beginning of this episode, and you get about a third of the way in and you realize this guy is bat guano crazy. And he's not only a danger to himself, he's a danger to the entire quadrant.
Not only is it one of the things that I like best about it when we're talking or when we're watching Dukat is we see how bat guano crazy he is, like you said, but he doesn't think he is. He thinks he did everything for the good of Bajor. He wanted to save them. One of the things that I find most interesting about this episode is when he's talking about in his first month of his administration, quote unquote, which I thought was kind of funny. He got rid of child labor and he reduced output by 50%. And then he said, by the end of my first month, the death rate had dropped by 20%.
Yeah.
Way to go, buddy.
Yeah.
And he thought that was great. I just thought it was amazing that he thinks all this good he is doing and how instead of killing a whole bunch of Bajorans for the fact that they blew up a mining depot or something like that, he only killed the same amount of Bajorans that Cardassians were killed. So he's got that going for him too, which is nice.
It is nice. Well, that's because in his own mind, you know, Dukat is the supreme hero of everything he ever did. And he really believes it. I think that's what really kind of exposes his psychosis in this episode. He doesn't just think that, you know, he did an effective job as the Prefect of Bajor, you know, for Cardassia. he believes that he was on the side of right and can't see anything else beyond it. And I think by the time that Sisko comes to realization that he's got to go along with this if he's going to survive, when he realizes the deception in the middle, I think he understands exactly how bad off Dukat is.
Yeah, and I think the turning point for that, when they were discussing things at the beginning in the cave, I think Ben was kind of questioning how he was going to have to deal with this. But I think the turning point was you saw this complete change in Dukat's face and tone of his voice when he said something to Sisko. Sisko answered it, and Dukat just looked at him and goes, "The emissary has spoken." That was like, wow. Yeah. That was a wow moment for me, where it's like, okay, this is where we see that Dukat doesn't really think they're good friends like he keeps hoping they are. He really has a problem with Sisko being the emissary, and he just showed a true color, and Sisko's now figuring out what he needs to do.
Well, and the whole way Dukat is treating Sisko like a long lost friend. I mean, he calls him Benjamin the entire time. You know, he tries to, it keeps referring to him as my friend, and it's almost like he's looking for some sort of absolution from Sisko. Mm-hmm. Like, you were following orders, you were just doing what you had to do. And that doesn't come. And you can see Dukat, stacking triggers the entire way with every reaction from Sisko before he just finally snaps.
Yeah. Yep. Dukat did no wrong the entire time he was Prefect of Bajor. It was always the Bajorans' fault. And I thought that was a great insight into his mind when Sisko kind of egged him on to admit to that. But it was really great because he believes it. And we dealt with this in real life here in our time back in World War II. We dealt with this. I found myself relating to what was going on in World War II in this episode. And you got a guy like that in charge. It's always somebody else's fault. Somebody else caused this. We had to fix the problem. So we did.
It's interesting. We've had after our last discussion regarding Duet.
Yep.
We've had people contact us and say, well, why do you only bring up the Nazis in World War II? Clearly, there are other examples of genocide, and there are. Mm-hmm. There absolutely are. But, the Cardassians and the occupation of Bajor is designed to be a complete, acknowledgement of Nazi Germany and the concentration camps and those types of things. So when we keep invoking Nazi Germany, that's why.
Exactly.
It's because that was intended by Deep Space Nine. It's not that we don't recognize those other conflicts or they're not as relevant. Absolutely they are. But we're trying to treat it the way the writers saw it. So, and I say that to preface my next comment, which was as I was sitting there watching this the other day or rewatching it, I thought to myself, what would have happened if Hitler had been marooned in a cave with George S. Patton?
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh.
In a similar situation, because here's Sisko, he's commander of the most important resource, in the Federation, closest to the wormhole, in the middle of the Dominion War. And here is the guy who essentially led the occupation of Bajor. And really as far as two comparable characters, the ones I think of are Hitler and Patton. And it made me wonder how that particular interaction and conversation might have gone. Yeah. And when you realize that Dukat really is just gone, he's not able to rationalize. He's not able to hide, the hatred inside. You realize how truly evil he is. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the point that kept coming home to me when I watched this episode. Dukat is more than just, the villain of the story. He's more than just the guy who was the Prefect of Bajor. He's the guy that wanted to murder as many Bajorans as possible. And that's really kind of chilling when you come to it in this episode.
It's funny because he murdered so many Bajorans when he was Prefect. And at the end of this episode, he says that they don't know what it's like to be my enemy, but they're going to find out. I'm paraphrasing. But let me ask you this, because this is something that came up in my mind while I was rewatching this, is we know that he's crazy. I mean, you can't be sane to do the things that he did when he was Prefect. Do you think that it was the death of Zial that tipped him over the edge, or he's just always been completely gone, and that was just the last straw in terms of his complete downfall into insanity?
I think it's a little call.
I'm sorry to jump on you, because I think he's been insane the whole time, but not to the level that we see him in this.
I think it's a little column A and a little column B. I think he's been evil the whole time, but I don't think his descent into insanity occurred until Zial was killed. Mm-hmm. Quite honestly, Dukat wanted to paint himself as a leader, as not even really a redeemer of sorts, but as somebody who ushered in a new era for Cardassia. Mm-hmm. Like I say, he wanted to be the hero of his own story, and he bought into his own PR, I think, in a sense. When Zial was gone, I think it pushed him over the edge to the point where he couldn't contain any of that. We get to the end of the episode and he says, I'm so glad we had this time together, Benjamin, because we won't be seeing each other for a while. I have unfinished business on Bajor. They thought I was their enemy. They don't know what it is to be my enemy, but they will. Mm-hmm. From this day forward, Bajor is dead, all of Bajor. And this time, even their emissary won't be able to save them. So he takes that hatred for the Bajorans and now wants to turn it into a maniacal rage. He wants to go on a killing spree, the type that nobody has ever seen. He wants to be the next Pol Pot or Hitler, mm-hmm. or, pick a genocidal dictator from history. And I think that it really is Zial that pushed him over that edge and off a cliff.
What's so interesting about that, because I agree with you, but what I find interesting about that is Zial was not part of his life for most of her life. She was in a prison camp being held by the Breen. And he was going to kill her. He went on that mission to find her, to kill her. And then after that, they're only together for a little bit of time before she's kind of left on the doorstep of Deep Space Nine so he can go off and kill Klingons. So the relationship that they had was extremely short, but it sure must have had a powerful impact on him, because that amount of short time together and then that death by his good friend Damar pushed him right over the edge. I've always found that a little bit interesting.
Well, Dukat, up until this point in Deep Space Nine, had been able to rationalize everything he did, mm-hmm. From start to finish, whether it was the actions he took against the Bajorans or whether it was, essentially overthrowing the Gestapo council on Cardassia and becoming the de facto leader. He always had a rationalization. And when he gets to this point, he no longer needs to rationalize, because all he has is the voices in his head and hatred. He doesn't have to, masquerade anymore. He can just be pretty much who he's been all along, although more unhinged, I think, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I don't, no spoiler alerts or anything, but I don't think we can talk about this episode without talking about what we see the next time we see him. And, this episode, gonzo, off the deep end. He is in his own little world and he is full of rage and hate. The next time we see him, I believe, is when he is a member of the Pa Wraith cult and he's calm and collected. He's got the plan, but we don't see him as nuts as he is in this episode. And that's an interesting transition that we see with Dukat later on down the road.
Well, I think it's an illustration of other types of people who've gone insane that we've seen. At some point, they're able to bring it down a notch and center and realize that, what they really wanted to do is destroy X or Y or Z all along. I don't think he could keep that mania up. I think that he finds a way to harness it and channel it. So by the next time we see him, it's become his goal and his mission, not just his mania and his raving.
Nice. I have one question. Actually, I have two questions, but I'm going to go with one question for you right now. We've seen this a lot in Star Trek. How come there only is one ship around that can do a job that needs to get done? Or two ships, because Constellation was included in the Defiant and Constellation have to be the ones that go on the convoy thing.
A dramatic license. The Enterprise is the only ship in the quadrant. Exactly. How many times do we hear that? Or the only ship or the closest ship or whatever. It's an effective way to tell a story. I mean, we could talk about the B plot in a bit, but before we get to that, this is a pretty heavy discussion on a pretty heavy episode.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to take a little bit of a break at this moment, and we're going to insert something that is a lot lighter. And then we're going to come back to talking about Waltz right after this. But recently, Dan, you and I had the opportunity to speak to two Star Trek legends about their upcoming appearance at Northeast TrekCon. And it's safe to say that there's a lot of laughter. Would you agree?
I would agree. Legends is an understatement. We have had the honor of having J.G. Hertzler on the show in the past to talk about Martok and his experiences with Deep Space Nine and Star Trek. But we were joined, we had J.G. on very recently, and we were joined by another Klingon legend, Mr. Bob O'Reilly, Galron himself. And when the two of them are talking at the same time, it gives you a pretty good idea of what you can expect at a convention. And they will both be at Northeast TrekCon. So we had a great discussion about what we can expect in just a couple weeks. All right, folks, for this segment, we want to welcome two Star Trek legends to the show. The first...
Well, wait, there's me, and who else is here? Wait a minute.
It's my dog, Harry.
Okay. Now,
would you let the man introduce us? Just be quiet for 2 minutes, will you?
I'm sorry.
Well, okay, a minute. Okay, because I know you can't do it for 2. Just be quiet for 30 seconds.
No,
Could you give us 30 for an intro? Okay.
I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Sir Patrick Stewart. And
You're
I'm the cable, the transatlantic cable.
they don't even know who you are yet, so just try to be quiet for a minute. 30 seconds. Okay. Try 30 seconds. Okay. Buy a Pontiac. Yes.
The voice you hear right there is, of course, the one and only General and then Chancellor Martok from Deep Space Nine. He is Mr. J.G. Hertzler. J.G., thank you for returning to Trek Geeks to talk about some fun and entertaining stuff in just a moment.
Yes, J.G. is one of my favorites.
I thought I had the first billing. How come it's you now? Just because you're the only living Klingon leader?
I'm the only living Klingon chancellor. No, go ahead. Introduce the other guy.
Yeah, well, we can handle that one, at the convention right then and there.
Absolutely. Yeah. The other voice that you are hearing right now, ladies and gentlemen, it's his first visit to Trek Geeks, and he is yet another Klingon legend. He was leader of the Klingon Empire in both the Next Generation as well as Deep Space Nine. Galron has been a fan favorite for many years, and we are honored to welcome Mr. Robert O'Reilly to the show as well. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us for a little bit here on Trek Geeks.
See, I was willing to be quiet for my introduction, and it was so good. Thank you very much. Now, can we get J.G. off the phone?
Wait a minute. Is O'Reilly going to be in this entire conversation?
Allegedly.
Tell me that, man.
That wasn't in my contract.
It's a lying Trek geek. You didn't say anything about O'Reilly to be here.
Now, listen, I want every Klingon who's listening here. They better be at that convention. CAG, are you hearing me? Everybody from CAG. Everybody from KEG, too. Did you know that there was a KEG and a CAG? The KEG guys, they drink a lot of beer, so they need to be there, too. So, okay. All right.
I got to ask you something later on, on the air. Anyway, this is Northeast TrekCon in Albany. I'm not even sure. Let me see. Now all the captains...
You're never sure of anything, but I am sure that it's in Albany. That's for sure.
All the major captains are going to be there, like me as captain of the Saratoga, and then there's me as Klingon captain of the ship that in Borderland, and then there's
Was that the one that blew up?
Yes.
Yes.
They all blew up.
Oh, that's when you played a Vulcan, you blew up.
No. I just realized that, Bob. I
ate too many beans that day and just exploded.
Both times I played a Klingon captain of a starship, it blew up. And I did not survive it as a captain.
Do you ever think about getting driving lessons?
Yeah. Thanks for the tip. Anyway.
Yeah, AAA just won't insure you anymore. I mean, that's it, Come on.
Ferengi Starship Insurance. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, they'll give you a fender when you total your ship.
Yeah, it covers the powertrain warranty for dilithium crystal core. Yeah.
Well, I'm telling you, Klingons, listen up. Be at that convention.
What convention?
The one in Albany.
Yeah.
Did it pass already? See, time goes quick around here. Jesus.
No, we're going to be at the convention. It hasn't happened already.
Yeah, the two of us are going to be at. That's the first time we're at a convention in a long, long time.
Well, especially over here in the East Coast, because you don't travel.
This is historic. This is very historic, so they better be there. You know, it's like we'll allow Vulcans too. And
Dan and Bill, are you still there?
Oh yeah, We're having.
Sorry, it's the Bob and John show now. That reminds me the fact
I am tap dancing as we speak. Dee 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 dee.
The fact that you, Dan, introduced me first goes against every time we've been introduced for the past 20 years. It's always Gowron and Martok.
Yeah,
welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Gowron.
Gowron and Martok.
And his little son, Martok. Yeah.
And who is this? Who is this little friend? Oh, it's Martok. Yes. Oh, okay. Yeah, the man who has no toys. Oh no, he finally got a toy. He finally has a toy now. Right.
Yeah, Bob gets plates. He's got baby's bibs, and anyway, you guys want to say anything? I'm sorry.
Well,
ask any questions. Forget about it.
Gives everyone a perfect example of what it's going to be like at Northeast TrekCon during the weekend of October 26th through 28th in Albany. When these two fine gentlemen are on stage together, I can only imagine what it is going to be like, because as everyone has heard over the past few minutes, it's no holds barred, and I'm digging it pretty much.
Well, we have a saying that we use on each other, and it's an old Klingon saying. It's very it's grandiose and way too long, but it goes attack, 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 and that's what we do with each other.
That's what Bob does, especially if I'm trying to answer some poor questioner's problem. They're out there in the audience asking a serious question about
like how long does it take to get in your makeup?
Yeah, and Bob behind me, running around with some sort of, a white hanky or something, anything that he can distract with upstage. He is the best upstage actor I've ever worked with. And
it takes years of practice. Yes.
We're going to hire a writer sometime to actually give us some material, because as it is, it's just this junk that you hear right now. That's it. That's the show. Hope you enjoyed it. We're here all week. Try to live.
So how long have you guys been doing this together, and how many conventions do you guys actually think you do a year together?
Well, I think I do like 40, but in reality, there's about 3.
Well, usually one runs right into another one because we won't shut up. It's like.
How long have we been doing this, Bob?
We've been doing this. We've been doing this.
Let me see. Since I haven't seen you since. Let me see.
Well, I haven't seen you. I've never seen you. Well, I haven't seen you.
No, I've never seen you before.
Yes, we've never seen each other before. I don't. Who are you, by the way? What are we talking about? Well, that's senility. Anyway, but I think it's been minimally 25 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Because
come to think of it, yeah.
Because we were both. Because my kids are now 20. They're going to be 22 soon. So they were about 3 years old when we first met, so it's only about 20 years.
No, they were born.
20 years.
They were born.
Oh, you remember when they were born?
Yeah.
God, I don't remember when they were born.
Came over to St. Joe's to see them. Absolutely.
Oh, you did?
They were
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I don't doubt that you don't remember.
What a memory! You really have a memory.
It was a pretty special time for you.
Where am I, by the way? Anybody know?
Walla Walla, Washington.
No, but
I'm looking around. I see a bunch of trees around me, but there's a targ. There's a targ going by. Yes, it's an old targ though. So don't worry.
About a half an hour ago, I was going to mention the fact that I got a chance to introduce Buzz Aldrin at some event that was I forget what it was over there in Los Angeles.
Wow. Well, it was Jimmy Doohan's weekend for Gala weekend. He threw his 80th or 81st. I think it was his 80th birthday party,
Irish Eyes Are Smiling.
We sang "Irish Eyes Are Smiling" to him, and it was a great moment. And then we had that picture taken with Buzz Aldrin.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't Buzz Aldrin. We had a picture taken with Neil Armstrong.
That's who I meant. Yeah.
But earlier, I got to introduce Buzz Aldrin at this event. Not that event, different event. But I said, Buzz Aldrin. I don't know him. He's for real. We work on plywood. Our starships are made out of wood.
Speak for yourself. I never worked for plywood on my life. I was always in a spaceship, going around the planets.
Nice. Okay, with stagehands on it, opening the doors for you. Yeah.
Sometimes they didn't, and I smacked right into the door. Didn't that ever happen to you? I think they did that on purpose because they didn't like me too much. I don't blame them because I talked all the time. I wouldn't shut up.
I can't imagine.
Could we have a double speak on that again? I can't imagine.
No, but I was telling you, I had to introduce Buzz Aldrin. I said, what am I going to say? How am I going to introduce him? I said, I know. Buzz, I know exactly how you feel because it's always when we're introduced, it's always Gowron and Marc. And with you, it's always Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. And so I empathize, and I basically cry for you, Buzz, because I know that. Why do they call you Buzz? And I said, I know. Let me see. 1969 is when you went to the moon. So let me see. Oh yeah, now I see it. You and Neil Armstrong were sitting in the capsule going towards the moon. It's like you're looking out the window and you lit up you lit up a J to go. Neil, we're going to the moon, man. That's the name, Buzz Aldrin.
I can't take him anywhere. Do you understand why I constantly interrupt him? You leave him with the story, and he just goes off on this insane tangent.
Oh, my word. So I'm going to ask
We're going to the moon. Hey, Neil.
I'm going to ask one serious question, and Bob will start with you, and then JG, you can follow up if you feel so inclined. You guys have been doing cons for a while, and how would you say fandom has changed in the last 25 years? I mean, you guys have met a lot of fans. You've certainly talked to a lot of people discovering Deep Space Nine. Do you encounter that a lot as you meet people in the cons?
JG, why don't you go with that? Because, you were on Deep Space a lot more than I was.
I'm younger and smarter than Bob, so I'll take it first. That would give him
he actually remembers the show. Yes.
What show?
Well, I forgot.
Babylon 5.
I just know it wasn't Voyager. I know it wasn't Voyager. Yeah.
No. I don't know that the fans have changed that much. We've gotten older, but the fans, they sort of stay the same. It's, we get generations because it's funny how little, kids, 10 years old, 11 years old, they were made to watch us by their grandfathers and their fathers and mothers. And they say, and they know everything about the shows. And I think, how can you possibly know? This show was at least
25 years ago.
Yeah. And they said, well, I watched it with my dad every night when it was on somewhere. I said, oh, okay.
And now they record it or they replay it on Netflix or something. Somehow they do it.
Yeah.
And so we've even got kids coming up, who are, like JG said, about 10 years old. And the Klingons tend to be an age a little bit older. The Klingons are tending to, I've known Klingons for 20, 25 years easily, because I was doing this before JG, in almost 30 years now. So some of them, are, well into their 70s. And others are young. A young Klingon now is like 30. So
sure.
Quite a few. I was just recently in one convention, and a lot of the guys come from Klingons. I'm talking about come from the military, and they used to see our shows in Iraq, and Iran, and and all over the world, and at all the theaters, that we have around the world, Korea, and they would just play the shows a lot, and obviously they just simpatico with the Klingon.
When you say theaters around the world, you mean theaters of war that are going on, or where?
Yeah, theaters of war, not theaters of not stage theaters like you are prolific at.
Yeah.
Did you know that JG is really an opera singer? That's how he got into the business.
That's a good intro to to a very important thing. We're going to be doing Klingon opera.
Well, did I tell you how I got into the theater? No. I was hanging lights, and the rehearsal was going on, and I fell onto the stage. And I said, director, not the guy, the director said, perfect timing. You'll play, and that was it. I was an actor.
No pressure.
So you really fell into the business then?
I just actually did fall into the business. He accepted me right away, and knew a guy who knew timing.
There was a little pile of dog right there on the stage. You fell right into the business. But besides that,
this is public radio now. This is public radio, so you have to watch your P's and Q's.
No, listen, we heard some stuff on CNN with the whole Kavanaugh thing. We heard. Well, I can't even repeat the thing because I don't know.
Let's not go there. Let's not go there.
Anyway, I got into it because I got into theater. Because I played football at Bucknell college.
With girls, it's always girls with them. It's girls.
It was, and and it still is pretty much. But I was leaning. I was doing nothing. I was sitting up. I had all this time in my hands because when you play football, there's lots of hours of practice and dressing and. Anyway, it takes a long time. So I had all this time suddenly my senior year, and I was just hanging out. And Janet Cunningham, it was just, she was dynamite. This is 1970.
She was the cat's meow. Is that the expression in our day when we were young? The cat's meow.
That was the expression in 1928, Bob.
That's what I mean. That's we go back a way, or at least I do.
She was hot.
Anyway,
yeah. And she said, "Hi, John." I said, "Hey." And she said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Nothing." She said, "Well, why don't you come in and audition for this show?" I said, "Well, are you going to be in it?" she said, I don't know. I'm going to audition. I said, okay. and that's how I got into the business.
So you fell in too. Actually, you fell over. You fell over a gal.
Here's that interesting story. Well, interesting tag to that. The man there was only one theater director at Bucknell. It was Dr. Harvey Powers. And he ran the theater and he was directing the show. It was called Marc.
I remember old Harvey. Yeah. He was kind of old in those days. Anyway, Bob. He's probably dead now. You know?
No, well, he is, unfortunately. But his son was also in the show, Marc Powers. Yeah. This is the first show I did, and it was called Marat Sod by Peter Brook. Remember this? Anyway.
I remember, and I remember the play, too.
Yeah, and Marc Powers was his son. He played Jacques Roux in this play. And about 3 days ago, Marc Powers drove up my driveway and said he bought the property almost immediately next to where I live up here in upstate New York.
You're kidding. So, did he know it was you?
Yeah. His dad was the person who got me.
Did he want an autograph?
No, for some reason he didn't. He didn't say anything about that. It was just an oversight. But I have a lot of signed pictures. I'll be happy to drop one off at his house. Anyway, this is I'm talking 1972 to the present. How many years is that? Like 50 years?
That's a lot of years. That's 40 to 50 years.
Yeah. One of
the
chances. Huh? Anyway.
Wow. Okay. All right. Here's my story. No, I don't have a story. I'd get it. My story would take so long, you'd all be sleeping, and I don't want to do that to you.
Well,
why did you go to sleep? I'll tell a story. It's like
a story about 10, 15 seconds of your telling. That would be it'll still put us to sleep. But guys, is there anything we can? Is there any question we can answer? Because this is supposed to be some sort of promo for Northeast TrekCon, which we're going to have a wonderful time at it. I guarantee you. But
I'm talking to all the Klingons in the universe. Get there, be square. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I do have a question about Northeast TrekCon, guys. Are you going to be doing your normal at like Vegas? We've seen you, and when I first met you guys in 2014 in Boston, you guys had the full Klingon gear on. You were doing your thing on stage. Are we going to be able to see that up in Albany?
Yes.
I hope so. JG, are you planning? I'm planning on getting into the whole schmagegi.
Into Ridge, yeah. We're going to do it on Friday night for sure.
Okay, Friday night. And then, JG, are you there Saturday too?
Yeah, I'm there Saturday. I'm not there Sunday because I got to race back to
so they better get there. So they better get there Friday. Get there, everybody get there Friday, and so you're definitely there for JG and me on stage, and then Saturday.
Yeah, Klingon night, man. We're going to be doing Klingon opera. We've hired this Klingon woman to be. She's actually very, very good. Bob and I are even better than good. We sing, we make it up as we go.
Yeah. I'm like good rye bread, He's more like sourdough, but I
sing like pumpernickel, sort of
large sourdough, very large sourdough.
Yeah, thank you.
That's okay. Yeah.
I'll tell you what, guys, we are both, Bill and I are both looking forward to hanging out with you in person October 26th through 28th at the Albany Capital Center in Albany, New York for Northeast TrekCon. Can't wait to see you guys, and we really appreciate you coming on and telling us a little bit about your past and about what your plans are. And I got to say, Bob, I promise the next time that we have you guys on, I'll do my best to give you top billing, man. How's that?
Sounds good. Boston strong. Yeah. And Albany all the way.
Go Pat. Oh, no, this is Albany. That's right.
Yeah. Guys, thanks so much for being with us, and we look forward to seeing you in just a couple weeks.
All righty. Take care. All right. Go Sox.
It's amazing. I think you and I appear in that conversation somewhere. I think I heard our voices at one point. I'm not really sure.
I thought it was the Richard Hatch interview all over again. No, it really they just kept going.
They just run with it, man. Yeah. It was hilarious.
They are true entertainers in every sense of the word. They have some great history between them. And what's funny is they really never interacted that much on the show. They were only in a couple episodes together, which is great. Yeah. And now they go all over the world together to these conventions, like the one that they're going to be at in just a couple weeks in Albany at Northeast TrekCon, doing their Klingon thing. And for people who have not seen it, we've had the opportunity to see it. We saw it in Boston in 2014. It is amazing. It is a lot of fun. You're going to be laughing. And as we saw, or as we heard with this conversation, it's pretty much all off the cuff. There's nothing scripted in the stuff that they do at these conventions. And it's comic gold by the Klingons. I can't wait to see it again in just a couple weeks.
It's going to be fantastic. So let us get back to the discussion at hand and Waltz. Before we cut in the conversation with JG and Bob, we started talking about the B plot and how the Defiant was really, the only ship that could do this, escort that convoy or whatever it is from the troop transport from the Badlands.
30,000 troops.
30,000 troops. I think the thing that surprised me the most about this episode is that a lot of times B plots in an episode like this really are kind of out of place and don't work. But I thought that this B plot worked for this episode a lot better because it was tied directly to the A plot. It wasn't running in parallel. I mean, here they are out there searching for the captain and for survivors, but mainly for the captain. And, Worf is trying to cut this as close to the deadline as he can before they have to go off. And I thought it was integrated pretty well. And I guess, well, what do you think before I press on with that?
Oh, I absolutely agree. I just threw that question out there kind of as humor, as we always have that. Oh, well, you're the only ship in the area, so you have to go on this mission. I think I like what you just said. It's not a parallel story to the A plot. It's all tied together, even though it is considered the B plot. I really liked how at times the writing of this episode made you think that they were getting ready to beam up Sisko and Dukat, because when we see the beacon, which I have another question about, which we'll get into after, and then all of a sudden on the Defiant they get a new signal, and then they've got two people that they're ready to beam up, and we're like, oh my gosh, this is it, they're going to rescue him. No, and the way they're Ryan, oh yeah, we just got two female crew members, one's a lieutenant, one's an ensign. Oh, okay. It's not that kind of funny. It's so disappointed. But it was
like getting socks on Christmas morning.
I like socks.
Not as a 10-year-old, you didn't.
No, that's true. I thought my favorite moment on the Defiant during that B story was the way that Bashir perfectly insulted Worf in a gentlemanly way. You won't take it wrong if I don't find your honor above Captain Sisko's life. You may live the bridge, Doctor. Live the bridge? You may leave the bridge, Doctor. I thought that was great. Bashir doesn't have much to say in this episode, but he said a lot in that one sentence.
That entire scene is great. Mm-hmm. They talk about, or Brian floats the idea of those communications were too garbled. I don't know what she said. Mm-hmm. And Bashir agrees, and Dax says, well, you know what? I understood what she said perfectly fine. And ultimately, the decision belongs to Worf.
Right.
So, Worf? Mm-hmm. And I thought that was really well played. I mean, you can understand why that would go 100 different ways, like, garbled communications, because we've never seen that in Star Trek either. But Dax, is the adult in the room and says, look, you know what the orders are. I know what the orders are. Let's not play this game.
Right.
There's more at stake here. Yes, the captain's life is potentially in danger, but there's 30,000 troops that need to be escorted, and they're defenseless. Why you'd put 30,000 troops on a defenseless ship, I don't know. Yeah. But that's just me. But yeah, you're right. The way that Bashir and Worf end that scene is it's pretty fantastic.
I don't think it's a problem to put 30,000 troops in a defenseless ship because they've got the Defiant and the Constellation. They're going to meet them there, and then everything's going to be fine. I totally hear what you're saying. I don't know. I had a thought in my head, and now it's gone. But There's one other thing that I wanted to bring up that I just find interesting in this episode, and I understand it needs to be done because it's an important and integral part of the story on the planet. But I don't know. I think technology in the future sometimes still has problems as advanced as they are, because I'm not exactly sure why you would want to have a distress beacon that on the front of the panel says that it's online, but on the back of the panel, you can still see it being offline, just to be duplicitous to the person in front of the device, right?
There are things that we just have to make allowances for. Maybe the display on the front is broken. And maybe it's like having a crack in your iPhone. It's still kind of usable, but it's not optimal. So when you do the full level diagnostic by opening the hatch and it says, "Oh yeah, this thing totally doesn't work," and then you just get to close the door and be happy.
Yes.
Oh yeah, no, it's fine.
Yep. And technology is still pretty advanced. I say that tongue in cheek, because if you can reset a distress beacon just by using the tine of a fork, you're either really good at engineering or you really don't have a very technologically advanced piece of equipment.
I look at it as trying to, the old digital watches of the 80s where you had to take like the end of a pen,
yes,
and depress the little button that you couldn't press with your fingers. I look at it like that. Maybe Cisco was trying to set the clock on the thing. No,
this is why I like podcasting with you, man. That's brilliant. Yeah,
I do like the B plot in this episode a lot. I think it's just as effective in helping to propel the story forward. And to me, that's what's important in a lot of these late Deep Space Nine episodes. There's a lot that occurs, whether it's the Dominion War or the stories they tell outside of the Dominion War, kind of like this one, which are sort of tangentially related. But I think it's a credit to Ron Moore's script because it does a great job of advancing the story and the Dominion War in a way, while coming up with a compelling conflict for these two characters.
I remembered what I was going to say. I know, right? Congratulations.
I'm stunned.
Yes.
I'm stunned. I don't want to keep going because you might lose it again.
I know. I want to get it out quick. So this episode made me think of one past movie and one past Star Trek episode. We talked about Patton already. And Patton used that whole, that's what you think it is. I think it was garbled in communications. Why don't you try to find out what they said again? That'll take another day at least. That takes place in Patton. And we saw that on the bridge of the Defiant. I thought that was great. It also reminded me of the Galileo 7 when they had to leave at an exact moment and they had to decide whether or not they were going to. And Kirk did everything he could to have that last scan of the planet to see if they could find the shuttle. Very similar thing happened here. And that's what I was thinking. And that's what I brought up. And I remembered it.
Well, and I think it's done effectively. I think it's done incredibly effectively. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the Cisco in this episode, because we spent a whole lot of time talking about Dukat and a little bit about the B story. But the other half of this waltzing duo is Benjamin Sisko. Mm-hmm. And he's clearly put at a disadvantage by being injured. Dukat has to take care of him at the beginning of this episode. And from the start, from the teaser on, Sisko is very uneasy. He doesn't want to be there.
Yeah.
This is a role he doesn't want to be in. And I don't know if it's because of the sympathy or empathy he feels for Dukat with regard to Zial, or maybe it's just because it's Dukat and he was an evil person. But I have to think that the last person he wants to be stranded in a cave on a stormy planet with is Dukat.
Oh, I think that's exactly the reason he's so uneasy, is because it's Dukat. Not because he's injured so much or anything like that, but all through the series, these two have been going back and forth, and they've been enemies, frenemies, maybe Dukat thinks, but I think that uneasiness completely is because of he's stranded with this guy who he thinks is, actually, maybe he doesn't think he's crazy until that point where the emissary has spoken. But I look at it, and I have always looked at it, that he's more uneasy because it's Dukat, not because he feels sympathetic or empathetic to what he's gone through.
I think that Sisko is appreciative at first of what Dukat is doing, although he's probably still suspicious.
And he does say that.
This This is a guy who's a prisoner, and all of a sudden he's taking care of, our captain.
Mm-hmm.
But, I thought it was interesting the way it was set up at first. Like, well, what do we do when somebody finds us? It's like, well, either way, we're going to have one prisoner.
Yep.
and one
ally,
one not so prisoner.
Yeah.
And it was fair. And I at least appreciated that was the gentleman's agreement of sorts. If you can make a gentleman's agreement with a crazy evil guy.
Yeah. You know what was chilling to me in this episode, and it didn't even come from Dukat or Cisco.
What's that?
It came from Weyoun when he was imagining Weyoun in the cave, and Weyoun just matter-of-factly said, the Dominion would have destroyed every man, woman, and child on Bajor long ago. Whoa. that Dominion. Yeah. I thought that was an interesting and overlooked description of what the Dominion was capable of. We got to see it later on when the female changeling said to kill every Cardassian, but I thought that was an interesting moment.
Well, do you think that that's really the case, or do you think that's Dukat's brain trying to rationalize and reconcile what Dukat has always wanted to do all along, to sort of enable him to say, yeah, that's what I wanted to do. Of course, that's what I wanted to do.
That's a very good point. I've always looked at it as that's what the Dominion would do, but that's something I'll have to now readdress because I had never thought of it like that. That's cool. I like that, man. Good thinking. Well,
because you figure Bajor signs a non-aggression pact with the Dominion.
Mm-hmm.
As long as Bajor will play along, the Dominion's not going to do anything.
Well, yeah, and that's what I mean. As long as they play along. Look what happens when the Cardassians stop playing along. The female changeling tells them to annihilate the entire population.
No, true. But my point is Dukat wouldn't have cared about a non-aggression pact. He hated the Bajorans so much that he just would have laid waste to the planet.
Gotcha. Okay.
And now it could be a little column A, a little column B, because I think that happens a lot in this episode in particular. But I almost think that that's Dukat's own mind finding a way to equivocate. I could be wrong about that, but that's just the way it seems to me.
Well, you're always right. So whatever.
Wow.
Let me ask you this.
Wow. Yeah, go ahead.
And I know my answer, but I'm very interested to hear your answer. Who does a better job in this episode? Marc Alaimo or Avery Brooks? Because they're both phenomenal.
They are. That's tough. I think I'm going to say Marc Alaimo, and here's why. I think it's because that episodes, are normally the toughest job in a given episode of television. I think is usually by the guest star, because they have to pack a whole lot into 40 some odd minutes for their performance. They don't necessarily get to carry it forward from week to week like regulars do, but this is some really heavy material that they've given to somebody like Marc Alaimo and given him the trust and the freedom to act this, the way he wanted to, and probably, take a risk or two. I think that it's that amazing because we see Dukat infrequently, but we still see the arc of that character carried forward really well. Yeah, there's some, don't get me wrong, Avery Brooks is fantastic. This is more great Cisco, but I have to say that I think that Alaimo edges him out just a bit because I think that Alaimo had a much tougher task in this episode.
Yeah. He had to show paranoia. He had to show rage, resentment, gratitude. He had to show this whole range of things in just this 45 minutes. And he does a great job doing it. It's very believable. I mean, sometimes you can look at a character doing or an actor doing some of these things and say, yeah, it's not really there. It's really believable. And he has to do it with pounds and pounds of makeup on his face and this wearing a leather metal casing for a uniform, which I always love. By the way, I love the Cardassian uniforms. But you're right. I love what Avery does in this episode. You can see that he's egging him on, and he has that chuckle every once in a while as he's trying to pull Dukat deeper into that abyss. But I, with you, would give Alaimo an edge over the performance. But they're both. Let's put it this way: we said this before in the past. You couldn't have had one performance without the other in this episode.
You really couldn't. And I think that that's true of these characters, going forward. We see great episodes by individually, Marc Alaimo and Avery Brooks, from here on in, as we have the whole way. But I think you have to have this episode to set up, what you leave behind, the series finale.
Absolutely.
Because without this, that conflict in the series finale seems like it's coming absolutely from out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's looking at those final scenes of those two in the finale ties perfectly to what we saw here with the dialogue and the level of emotion. And it's a great wrap up. It's actually kind of a wrap up to this episode when you think about it.
Interesting. I hadn't really thought about it that way, but I am now.
There you go. See, we help each other out here, man. And that's what I like about the show.
We do, until you leave me for dead in a cave before I leave you for dead in a cave. So just throwing that out there.
One other thing I did want to say. Love the silver cast that Sisko has on. That thing's awesome. I got to use that for like a Halloween or cosplay. I got a Sisko cosplay finally.
Yeah. The first time I saw that, I'm like, what, did they get that from the set of The Wizard of Oz? He's the Tin Man.
Either that or they took a disco ball off the ceiling and unwrapped it and then just stretched it out.
It's like he's wearing a stovepipe on his elbow. And they put a little metal brace in there just so he couldn't bend it, which I thought actually was a pretty good idea. But
I loved it.
Yeah. Well, if you've got a big metal stovepipe or something that looks metallic that doesn't bend, why do you need a little cross piece? I don't quite understand that. But
good point. Oh, see, you're always making me think, Bill.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Yeah. Other performances in this episode, I really have to say I appreciated Worf in this episode more than I have in other episodes, because Worf has to be in command and Worf has to be the guy in the center seat.
Yep.
And I think he wears command exceptionally well in this episode. He's not reacting. He's considering his options and being, I would like to think, as pensive as maybe say Picard in a situation like this. And I really think it shows an evolution of Worf. I really like what they did with him in the script.
I really do too. We see changes to that in later episodes. But actually now I have to think, does that episode take place before this or after this? I think it takes place after this with he and Jadzia on the planet trying to get the Cardassian spy. Yeah, there's not a lot of moments where we can say, okay, Worf is just being a typical Klingon. He's not. He's being a Starfleet officer in every sense of the word here. And I liked at the beginning of the episode when he was leaving Deep Space Nine, Kira made it very, very plain that he had until X time to search for the captain, and then he had to leave. And he just responded with understood. And I believed that he would leave at that second. That's what he does. And he did.
Well, and I appreciated that he didn't necessarily argue with Kira.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like she's Bajoran. Yes, they're on a Bajoran space station, but this is a Starfleet type ship and he's the Starfleet officer in command. And no, he did what I would hope he would do. And it was pretty fantastic. So, big kudos to Michael Dorn in this episode too, because his performance was really kind of great. And
we finally get to see it because I know it's been something that people have talked about for a while because they did refer to him. He was Captain Worf. No, nothing. Sorry.
No.
All right.
No. It's interesting because, people, like to complain about Star Trek 2009 and Into Darkness, where the person who's sitting in the chair is called captain no matter what their rank is. And we have seen it in other instances in Star Trek, albeit very infrequently.
Mm-hmm.
But when that happened, when I was rewatching, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right.
Yep,
they did do that.
They did.
So no, good catch, buddy. So final thoughts on Waltz. So we're not going to really do any central questions this week because really, I mean, this episode answers pretty much any question you had about Dukat. But what are your closing thoughts?
My closing thoughts are as when we come around to doing See It or Skip It season 6, which will be actually fairly soon, I think. We talk about what episodes of a particular series would you say is must see in order to introduce somebody to a show. This is must see. You have got to see this episode to understand that relationship between Dukat and between Sisko and what both of them have been dealing with over the previous 6 seasons and beyond, especially with Dukat as Prefect of Bajor. It is essential. and it is an amazing episode. 2 thumbs up. Got to see it. Don't miss it. Rewatch it because you're going to pick up things that you didn't see the first time, as I have done, and I've seen it several times. It's fantastic. And Renee did, as we said, a phenomenal job directing this episode. We only get to see Odo for like 30 seconds in this episode, but Renee's fingerprints are all over this one.
I'm really kind of surprised that you say that about this one being sort of must-see Deep Space Nine, because I think you have to watch a whole bunch of episodes before you get to this one. And for me, I don't know that it's a good one to set a newbie down in front of, because there's a whole lot of backstory you have to know.
Well, I look at it as this. If you're going to be introducing someone to, the way I look at it with See It or Skip It is, if you're going to be introducing someone to Star Trek, you're going to give them these specific ones that you want to see per season. When they get to season 6, I'm looking at it along the lines of they have seen the ones that we are like, you have to see season 1 through 5, which many of them will be the Dukat-Cisco relationship aspect, but you can't miss this one in order to see where that relationship is headed.
I understand where you're going now.
Okay.
And I appreciate the clarification, sir. For me, this is probably, well, the problem is there's so many great episodes in season 6.
Yeah.
For me, it's probably among the best of season 6. And that's hard to really quantify, because I can at least think of a dozen episodes that are among the best of season 6.
Yeah.
Because the season is that good. But if you rewatch this, and you really should pay close attention to Marc Alaimo and just how brilliant he is in this episode. Yes, okay, Dukat is evil. Yes, Dukat is a bad guy. But I mean, when you start to think about what Alaimo does on the screen in this episode, it really gives me a brand new respect for the guy. I mean, I loved him before, and it just, that respect for his ability and for his performance really just amped up several levels after watching Waltz.
And the last scene that we see him with in this episode, the people that were egging him on in his mind and causing him to go more and more crazy are there with him on the shuttle, and he's happy to see them as that door closes, because the people that he feels strongest with are there for him. Kind of twisted, but that's how I took it.
No, I read it the exact same way, so we're of like mind on that. This definitely was a great one to rewatch. I can never tire of this episode. It's not when you sit down and go, "Oh yeah, I'm going to watch Waltz today." It's another one of those episodes, but it absolutely is worth rewatching if you haven't seen it recently. It is that good. So, Dan, speaking of other things that are that good, there are 5 guys in a band, and they are exceptional. They are 5-Year Mission, and they are every ounce of music you hear on the Trek Geeks podcast. We are so truly thankful and grateful to them for letting us use their music each and every episode. We want everyone to head out to 5yearmission.net, as people are doing every week now. We hear about it, quite a bit, where people say, "Oh yeah, I finally listened to 5-Year Mission," and you're right, they're awesome. Well, guess what? They are awesome, and you need to go get yourself year 4 right now at 5yearmission.net, Dan.
Absolutely. And also check out Twitter and other places on social media this week, because they dropped a new one this week, Bill. Our good friend Jim Morehouse had a 5-Year Mission track recorded just for him. Of course, it's all about firing the phasers or whatever the hell it is. I don't know. But anyway, it's still pretty good. The song's pretty good. Not so sure about the acting job, but I'm just kidding. Jim was awesome in that. But you know what else is awesome? Is this episode that I just checked out. It was really good. We talked about it just recently with Holly Stoddart when we had her on See It or Skip It season 5.
With who?
Holly. Did I say Holly? I said Holly. Haley. See, I've never had her on before, so I didn't know what her name was.
Oh, no, I'm leaving this in. I just became the favorite again.
Yes, absolutely. There was some drummer dude going around killing all of Kira's friends, and she had to stop him. I mean, she had to stop this bad drummer. At first, I thought that he was hiding in the shadows because he was self-conscious of all the scars on his face, and that whole idea of what the episode was about. But then I realized, nah, that's just how he normally looks. It's the Farkness and the light on Deep Space Nine. Dun dun dun. Dun, dun.
What's wrong with you? What is wrong with you? That was, dude. Are you even trying?
I try.
You try my patience is what you do.
Absolutely.
But that's 5yearmission.net. Please go get all their music, become huge fans, because we are, and we want you to know the joy that we know from listening to 5 Year Mission. Dan, next week, we're going to change things up a little bit. We're going to go visit our friends over in the Delta Quadrant and see what's up on the good old Starship Voyager, aren't we?
There we are. So that we haven't talked about them in quite a while, and we're going to take a look at what I feel and what I think is one of the most entertaining hours in Voyager's 7-year run. And it kind of seems only fitting that we're going to have this discussion right around the Halloween holiday. We're going to talk death rays and lightning shields, creatures from the 5th dimension, Bill, the queen of the spiders, and Satan's robot. It's Bride of Chaotica next week on Trek Geeks, your independent Star Trek podcast.
I have absolutely no idea what to do with this information. So spoiler alert, I haven't seen any of the Captain Proton episodes, so I'm very excited by this. I'm going to do some homework before we get there, but I'm looking forward big time to talking Bride of Chaotica next week on an all-new Trek Geeks. Of course, Dan, for more great Star Trek discussion, we want everyone that hears this, and your friends and their friends, to go check out the Tricorder Transmissions online at the tricordertransmissions.com. They have such a great array of podcasts over there, Dan. Star Trek fans of all kinds are guaranteed to find something they love to listen to, so please check them out. And then, of course, for all the news on all the Star Treks, please visit our great friends at treknews.net. For now, this has been episode 155 of the Trek Geeks podcast. We do hope you all live long and prosper.
Coconuts are not dangerous.
Music for Trek Geeks is provided by 5 Year Mission. They are writing one song for each episode of the original series. Download their music at 5yearmission.net. Trek Geeks, a Star Trek podcast, is a production of Coconut Media Works, executive producer Bill Smith. For even more Star Trek discussion, check out Discovering Trek, a Star Trek Discovery companion, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and discoveringtrek.com.